In today's episode, we take a look at the unearthed arcana of spells and magic tattoos, discuss summoning, and talk about all the cool stuff we can now add to our campaigns. This is the DM Shower Thoughts. Welcome back. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the DM Shower Thoughts, the show where we talk about our shower thoughts in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop scenarios in general, how to become your best self through gaming. My name is Adamus.
I'm John.
And I'm Ian. Hello.
Hello. And we're going to kick things off right away, right into our fundamental. And our fundamental is going to be exploring the Unearthed Arcana post after the subclasses part 3, which was spells and magic tattoos. And I've got some initial thoughts about this document based from the framework and the theming of it that I'd love to talk about if y'all also have that. So we've been seeing a long trend of the Unearthed Arcanas and the various class systems and other options that seems to support a cosmological mechanical expansion. So like the idea of the outer planes and the far realms and all that jazz, and the aberrant races and alien races, psionics even, has been like this thing that exists, we know exists. Sometimes we get, creatures from the far realms, but not as much in-depth analysis of them. We have that in legacy lore, but in 5e, that amount exists, but it's dripped out. We get little snippets of the more specific planar things, and then like when I build worlds, like I have Ionian Feywild and Ionian Shadowfell, and those are based on legacy D&D and then new content from my head. And when we talk about far realms and different fiends and otherworldly forms and all that extra planar stuff that wraps around the material plane, often that can feel like, at least in 5th edition, it's very out there. And it looks like with this document especially, we're beginning to explore more concretely what creatures come from where and what do they look like, how does this work. And when you start looking at elemental spirits and aberrant spirits and fey spirits and shadow spirits and celestial spirits, and what do those look like, we have it in specific definitions that the players have access to, not just in the monster manual. And that's really exciting. Because it's going to open up the world in more concrete ways, not just conceptually.
Yeah, I think that this also, like looking at what most of the spells are, it addresses a lot of the mechanical problems that I've had with certain character concepts. So like the Conjure Woodland Animal spell is like the bane of my existence. And it has to do with the fact that usually players don't know what they're getting into when they use it. So it's one of those things where they'll be like, I summon 18 horses. And then they're like, they're all flanking, right? So they all get an attack roll. What was the attack bonus again? And then they like have to flip through and it's like this whole this whole slowdown and process.
It's a snowball effect because they like go, okay, I've got this thing. Here's the spell I'm going to use, snowball, and they start rolling it down the hill, and then go, wait, what? I can get 4 of these, or 1 of these, or 8 of these.
Yeah.
And it says like in the description, your DM will have a list of creatures for you to do, and the DM's like, come on, man, don't throw me under the bus like that.
My favorite is this happened during my Tomb of Annihilation.
Yeah. Oh my God.
First professional thing where it was like, I cast this spell, and then pulled out like 3 manuals, and I'm like, I'm just moving on to the next person's turn. When you find what you want, you tell me. But it was one of those things where summoning is like a thing in fantasy, right? That's like an archetype of I can summon a beast that does things for me. It's the Pokemon model, of like, go Charizard.
It's been there for a long time.
I think that this, and they've said this before, like Jeremy Crawford especially, when you can give the stats as part of the spell Like, it just helps everybody. It's very clear what your options are. The numbers are all in one place. And the fact that you get to choose what it looks like, even though its abilities are consistent, still lends itself to the specific creativity that you want your players to have to create an enriching story. So I'm with you. I like this.
And I like that it's brought out in that specificity. Sorry, Ian.
No, it's fine.
I'm going to let you go right after this. But in the sense that there was this idea, and I think, again, Pathfinder, where you were rewarded for your bookishness, that you were rewarded for your study and memorization of the monster manual of the bestiary. You were rewarded for that because then you knew I can summon these monsters because they're this classification and this CR, and therefore I can bring them out. They have this hit dice, I can summon this many, blah, 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 blah. And that was rewarded because you knew what to do. But then you had other people that didn't do all that reading, because why? Where you would create the spell, when other spells in 5th edition, they tell you exactly what you need. Like, the dispel description is enough to tell you exactly what you need to do, so you don't have to think about it extra. You don't need extra materials. But then you have a summoning spell, and it's just okay, I summon this. Oh, there's more I have to look up. Oh, and there's this huge lag to that. So if you can just put that in the spell description, now the player can feel more freed to cast the spell because they know what their options are, and it speeds everything up. And it also takes the work off of the DM to then provide them with a list of celestial beings or fey beings that they can summon. Go, Ian.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because I've been playing a lot of Elder Scrolls 4 lately, Oblivion, and it's so much fun because there's so many things you can do. You can have like your strengths and your weaknesses, and I look at it for a bit of like D&D inspiration sometimes, because they knew. I mean, those guys know how to build a really good story. So one of the magic schools, I think, in Oblivion is actually Conjuration. And it's like my weakest magic because I don't have any Conjuration spells. But for people who specialize in it, there's spells like Summon Daedra, which is like a demon kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then there's Summon, like, I don't think there's a celestial one, but there's Summon like little creepy dinosaur monster. And like, it's so interesting. But like when you look at D&D, without this document, when you look at D&D, it becomes more of a challenge to figure out what the optimal summon is and like just the options that you have. So I'm really excited for this because I think that this really expands upon the school, or I think it's called the school of Conjuration magic in D&D.
A lot of Conjuration.
And like you were saying, it gives us more of a look into what these other worlds are like and what kind of creatures are there. So I'm especially excited for the Fae one, of course, because the Fae are the best, and you can't tell me otherwise.
I don't get along. But the other thing is, so I'm not one to ban a lot of options. Like, I'm not like, oh, you want to be a Vidalcan? No. Like, I'll find a way to try to integrate it. Yeah. The only spells I've ever banned are the conjure spells. And that's just because I've never had someone use them and it not be disruptive to the table. In that, it's like now we're spending a majority of our time looking up stats and monster manuals and rules because they're trying to, again, find the optimal creature to summon, the optimal amount with the optimal positioning. Now they're trying to control 8 different characters when they're already playing a complex caster. It was one of those things. I'm just like, no, you can't take it. Conjure doesn't work. And if you do conjure, you can only summon one thing. And so pick your thing wisely, which is why, again, I like these spells because they summon one thing. You get one additional thing to keep track of. And they're also flavored nicely. All right, so we can dive into it.
Yeah. So the spells that we get, we have expanded spell lists now, or spell options. And we can choose to take a look at some of these things that we're summoning. And it feels like that we're getting into the same territory, then we can move past them. But right out of the gate, expanding to the bard and the druid and the cleric, we have You get Fey spirits, and then of course druid spells get bestial spirits, bestial, whatever, bestial spirits, and then Fey spirit, elemental spirit. That's very on brand for them. Clerics get Spirit Shroud, a celestial spirit summoning, and this other thing called otherworldly form. The majority of what we're seeing is conjuration. Spirit Shroud is of course necromancy, and then the otherworldly form is transmutation. So we get a little bit more of our transmutation school coming out, but that looks like those are the main three. Paladin gets to get the Spirit Shroud, and of course can summon a celestial spirit. A bestial spirit can help out the ranger. The sorcerer gets some nice expansions at first level as well. You get an acid stream, evocation, woo! We're going to talk about that one definitely. Fey spirits and shadow spirits, because of course they're creepy. Aberrant spirit, which I'm very excited about. The elemental spirit, otherworldly form. And then the warlock can get Spirit Shroud, Fey spirit, shadow spirit, undead spirit, aberrant, otherworldly, and then a fiendish spirit, because of course they can, because they're warlocks. And then wizards get a similar expansion of acid stream, Spirit Shroud, Fey, shadow, undead, aberrant, elemental, otherworldly, and fiendish, because wizards have the biggest spell list, so it would track that they get them a pretty standard array there. So we can go through these because these are really interesting little spells. I'm very excited about Acid Stream as a whole.
Just my favorite on the list, actually.
So Acid Stream is a first level evocation spell. It's a 1-action spell. It's from yourself, but it's a 30-foot line. And it is concentration up to a minute. So a stream of acid emanates from you in a line 30 feet long and 5 feet wide in the direction you choose. Each creature in the line must succeed on a dex save or be covered in acids for the spell's duration, or until a creature uses its action to scrape or wash the acid off of itself or another creature. A creature covered in the acid takes 3d4 acid damage at the start of each of its turns. And when you do this at higher levels, that overall damage will increase by 1d4 for each slot level above first level. So already, it's like a breath weapon, but it sticks to you and it continues to burn unless you have to waste your action to get it off of you if you fail with your dex save, which is a great way to interrupt that action economy.
Yeah, no, that's...
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to say, I really like when we get breath weapon-y kind of things, but it also lends like credence to like acid damage or whatever it is. I think it's acid damage.
Acid,
yep. It lends credence to that concept of what acid actually is. It's not something that just hits you and then disappears. It's like, oh, wow, I'm losing some fingers here.
Instead of acid being like a liquid, it's something that can glom onto you. It doesn't even have to be sticky, but it stays on you.
Yeah,
and that's cool.
Oh man, yeah. No, I was just gonna say, especially for a first level spell, 3d4 isn't too much to scoff at, and especially like I can see this scaling really well actually with the later levels. Like if you feel like casting, with 5th level or something, that would be really good too. I can already see it. Oh man, I definitely think there is no caster that I play that I wouldn't want to take this spell on, to be honest.
Yeah, this there's a reason this is my favorite spell on the list. First, because it's a first level spell, it means you'll probably actually get to see it in play a lot, and it does fulfill a lot of different character concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Just to throw out some math, so a similar first level spell that we can compare it to is like Burning Hands. So Burning Hands is a first level spell that it's 3d6 fire damage, and if they succeed the save, they take half damage. But it only happens the one time. Now, Acid Stream does take up your concentration, but the 3d4 acid damage, take that 3d6, drop it a die, but if you hit a creature with it, they keep taking the acid damage over and over again. Yeah. So you could potentially, not that this would happen a lot, you could deal 30d4 acid damage over the course of a minute, especially if you have a strong team composition. So imagine a monk doing a stunning strike on a creature, hitting it with an acid stream, and then they can't use an action to get it off.
Yeah.
And to compare it to another acid spell, let's look at Melf's Acid Arrow. So
Yeah.
Acid Arrow deals 4d4 with a second level spell slot, only one more die.
Yep.
It can only hit one creature, and then it only does 2d4 extra damage once. However, it doesn't require concentration, so that's kind of a nice thing. But I can't tell you the amount of times I've had someone be like, should I do Mirror Image or let's try Acid Arrow? What do you mean it missed? So the other thing is, I like this spell because if it misses, they don't take half damage. It just misses. But you can, again, fire it in a 30-foot line. So if you have enemies that are lined up right, you might be able to get more than one. And the other thing that gets me excited is that this is a sorcerer spell. And in the class variants UA we went over with a couple months ago, Sorcerer had a meta magic feature that allowed it to switch out elements of damage types.
Yeah.
So, and I believe that one of the recent UAs that we haven't covered yet, one of the wizard ones can switch out damage types too. So, you know, I can imagine this not only be an acid spell, but like a fire stream where you hit with fire, but then they keep taking fire damage unless they use an action to put the flames out. Or a cold stream, or a shock stream, you know? So, like, it's not just, it's now there's an interesting choice between, am I going to do the one burst in a cone where I guarantee damage, or am I going to try for more consistent damage and maybe a little bit of control, but if it misses, it misses, you know? So, to me, whenever you create a spell that gives your spell caster more than one option with their damage type specialty, to me, now you've engaged interesting tactical play, because it's not I do the option that works or the option that doesn't. It's which option do I think is going to be more appropriate, and now I have to spend my spell slot to do that. So I just Acid Stream is like mwah.
Now I want to clarify something with the concentration up to a minute. Now, if you're a concentration, you cast a spell and you're holding onto it, on subsequent turns, can you spray again because it's concentration?
You can. No, the concentration is, does the acid stay on them?
Okay.
So, like, if they haven't used an action to wipe it off, but they smack you in the head and your concentration goes away, then their
that's
acid
the
goes away.
Point. Yeah.
It's so if you
sometimes the function of concentration isn't always, well, it's usually dictated, but like this is UA, whereas like Sunbeam is concentration, and it's constant. So every turn you fire again, essentially, or it's always on until someone breaks concentration or you turn it off. Whereas this is the acid stays on them if they don't wipe it off, and you're not struck and your concentration is broken.
I think I see what you're saying there. Yeah, like for example, Wall of Light, which is something I use a lot for Eld. That requires concentration, but it's not like something sticking to them. It doesn't move with them after they get hit or something. It stays there. And of course, I can spend an action to whap them with a beam of light or something. But I can see where the difference would be between Acid Stream's concentration and Ball of Light or something.
Yeah, the clarification here is if you read it, so each creature in the line must succeed a dex save or be covered in acid for the spell's duration.
That's it. Yeah.
So that's where it's like clarifying how concentration relates to the spell's effect.
Exactly.
Well, there we go.
All right. Now, and it looks like a lot of these spells are concentration, and it's probably going to be a running theme here. The next spell on our list is Otherworldly Form. It is a 6th level transmutation spell. It's one action to cast it. Range is on yourself, and it's an object engraved with a symbol from the outer planes, worth at least 500 gold. And then it's up to a minute concentration. But here we go. Uttering an incantation, you draw on the magic of the lower or upper planes, your choice, to transform yourself. You gain the following benefits until the spell ends. You are immune to fire and poison damage for the lower planes, or radiant and necrotic damage, the upper planes. Immune, not resistant. You are immune to the poison condition for the lower planes, or the charmed condition for the upper planes. Spectral wings appear on your back, giving you a flying speed of 40 feet. You have a +2 bonus to AC. All your weapon attacks are magical, and when you make a weapon attack, you can use your spellcasting ability modifier instead of strength or dex for the attack and damage rolls. You can attack twice instead of once when you take the attack action on your turn. You ignore this benefit if you already have a feature like extra attack that gives you extra attacks. Whoa.
I like this spell. This
So
is a
your
good
wizard
spell.
just became amazing. Ish.
Uh,
You know? What do you think, John?
So, this is like, all right. It's a nice little buff, and the only thing is that I don't think a wizard would be the best use for it, because the only wizard that I would find using it would be like a Blade Singer, and Blade Singers already have extra attack, so you're losing the benefit of the extra attack. I do think that if you build specific clerics, now you've built a really competitive cleric class. And especially if you
That's it.
yeah, I don't know. There's just you can just there's a lot you can do with it. And the other one is actually Hexblade Warlock, like Rowan.
Yeah, that's what I was
like
thinking.
if you can imagine a Hexblade Warlock that's a blade pact, instead they can forego their invocation that gives them extra attack to otherworldly form, and I think that Hexblade Warlock would actually be a monster if you gave them this this thing. With Wizard specifically, I think that there's just so many other things you could do, because this is a 6th level spell, so you're telling like it'd be, you have other spells you could be doing. Why would you be using your action to attack, you know? So,
right. Yeah, I can see that.
And I really think that the best class that could actually probably use this is some kind of Paladin Warlock multi-class, because you can imagine a tanky Paladin, or like having 2 levels so you can Divine Smite, and then you have this otherworldly form that, you know, we're just talking starting equipment. You can have an AC of like 22 with 40-foot move speed that can fly, and immunity to poison and immunity to all these damage types. And your weapons are considered magical all the time. It's just this can be a really dirty combo, mostly for multi-classing, actually. Not even so much. Like, think about a sorcerer. Sorcerer also gets access to this. So you take a Sorkadin class, right? So 2 levels of a paladin, a lot of levels of sorcerer, pop the wings, and this would be pretty. That's how I'd see it anyway.
And I could see any like a wizard, at least looking at the mechanical implication of immune to fire. That if you're dealing with someone that has breath attacks and you're getting annihilated, even if you're taking half damage, being able to say I'm immune to fire is really nice. But you're also then trading your concentration slot to make yourself immune to something, and there might still be claws on that thing, and all the other benefits wouldn't stack as well. But I can see where a player would go, immunity, just very quickly have that. But I agree that there might be more optimized options, but I like that exists, so you can at least choose what's kicking my butt right now, and be able to say I'm immune to this now because I need to survive so I can, last another round and figure out what to do.
Yeah, and I mean that kind of reminds me of I've been looking at those kinds of spells and abilities lately, especially for Rowan. Now, I don't think this would be optimal for her build right now, but I took another look at Tomb of Levistus, which is one of the invocations that you can get for Hexblade, or, well, any warlock. And it's basically you encase yourself in ice as a reaction, and you gain temporary HP up to like 10 times your warlock level or something, so up to 200 HP. And this is a reaction, so like you basically grant yourself this really amazing ice shield, but the downside, I think, is that if you take fire damage or something, you get stunned for the next round. So it can be a really good like get out of jail free card, but only in certain situations. And I can kind of see where this spell would also be something like that. But as John was saying, I honestly love the idea of Rowan having otherworldly form, because that means I don't have to take Thirsting Blade, which is the attack twice thing. I don't have to take like Eldritch Smite because I can just get Smite with the Sorkadin bit. But even if I went with Eldritch Smite, like I'm planning on doing, this would still be really good. So I'm excited because it really makes me want to just rework her build so that I can have this. And it's balanced. It sounds really powerful, and it is, but it is still balanced because for Warlocks, this would only be able to be used once per long rest or something.
Through your Mystic Arcanum.
Yeah, exactly. Because you only get up to 5th level otherwise. So this is really good for that boss fight, like end of the fight moment, in addition to your Hexblade's Curse, which gives you improved critical and all sorts of fun things. So it's definitely something I would actually really love to incorporate into her kit.
Well, and the last thing with this before we move on is Adam mentioned one of the key things about this, which is you get to choose. Are you going to get power from the lower planes or the upper planes? And since we're talking about cosmology, what are the story implications of you switching between them? So like, let's say you're a Hexblade Warlock and you're kind of using darker powers and you draw upon Celestia, to get the resistance, like the power of angels. Is that going to make the angels mad that you drew from their power source?
Yoink.
Or the opposite, like if you allow the lower planes in to get energy, will that now be a gateway for devils to be able to talk to you in your sleep? Like, so are there, it's a narrative gateway to be able to do that. And also, this is what I was thinking is, I would love to make an Angel Hunter build based off of this spell, because if you look at it, when you choose to get power from the upper planes, you choose basically the things that the upper planes get. So it's like, I want to hunt angels down, angels killed my father. So like, could you imagine like the angels' worst nightmare is themselves? So you walk in with your angel wings and your immunity to radiant damage, and they try to hit you with their slaying bow, and you're just like, no, I don't take necrotic damage. So, try it. So it's I really think that this is a very rich spell that I agree is not unbalanced. I just think it's funny that all the best uses for it I can think of tend to be multi-class builds. Although as a Mystic Arcanum, this is really competitive too.
And I'm very excited about the story implications that you can lean into. Because a lot of our spells, if we start to really get into the depth of them, you can have the mechanical things that happen like that, and there you go, and there's the spell. Or there can be an extra layer of depth. That's when we get to describing the spell and what it looks like, and we open that up to the player to describe, hey, what does this look like for you? And then the next layer of, well, where are you drawing that power from, can really make a difference to the layers of depth, as long as we're all into that. But there's a lot of opportunity there, especially with all those different choices. I'm very excited about it. Now, Spirit Shroud is the next one on our list. It is 3rd level spell. It's a necromancy spell. And casting time is 1 bonus action, range on yourself. Another concentration thing. No material components, which is kind of nice. You call forth spirits of the dead, which flit around you for the spell's duration. The spirits are intangible and invulnerable, and they are good or evil, your choice. Until the spell ends, any attack you make deals 1d8 extra damage when you hit a creature within 10 feet of you. This damage is radiant if the spirits are good, and necrotic if they are evil. Any creature that takes this damage can't regain hit points until the start of your next turn. In addition, any creature of your choice that you can see that starts its turn within 10 feet of you has its speed reduced by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. And higher levels will increase the damage that you deal with slot levels.
This kind of reminds me of what is it? Vincent's build. He has like lots of interesting aura kind of things, and this isn't like quite an aura, but it has aura like effects. And I can see this being useful in those kinds of situations. Like, for example, if you're being flanked by, shadows like on all sides or something, and you like don't have access to other auras, like I forget which aura you use, John, but
Spirit Guardians.
yeah, like for some reason, yeah, you just don't have
the middle
Spirit
finger
Guardians.
to undead.
Yeah. And this could be useful. Who gets this again? It's like
Clerics, paladins, warlocks,
yeah.
and wizards.
Okay. Yeah. So this could be, if you're not playing a cleric who gets Spirit Guardians or something like that, then it could be really useful as like a half a thing of Spirit Guardians, and then you have the rest of your kit to rely on. So I like this idea a lot.
Yeah, I definitely like Otherworldly Form. I think that this is a great spell for Hexblade Warlocks. I think that it can offer a really nice little boost to your fighting style. Paladins too. I can really see this being used because paladins a lot of times don't use their bonus action for a whole lot of stuff. And they usually don't have concentration up. I mean, they've got a few spells like Shield of Faith and stuff, but to be able to consume your bonus action, give yourself a concentration-like effect, and give yourself consistent damage. I think you said No, I said Otherworldly Form. Like, this is along with Otherworldly Form.
Oh, again, okay.
Yeah, so like, yeah, so with Spirit Shroud is just a great, yeah. So with Spirit Shroud, I think it's best used on a paladin that's not gonna see the use of its bonus action all of the time, and who's going to have an open concentration slot to be able to consume. I think that if you're gonna go Hexblade, like, this could also be a really good use where you bonus action do this and then smack them a bunch. But
yeah, actually I didn't realize that it was a bonus action, so that's really good.
It's a powerful visual too. Like, if you have a paladin and you summon a bunch of good spirits, the spirits of your fallen comrades or other paladins of your order rising up around you to help you with your damage is also a cool visual to explore. And yeah, economically, there's your bonus action, which then it still opens you up to use your attacks.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even better, it's the slain that you've as a paladin have done your divine duty and executed great evil foes and stuff, and you basically
through that souls to you.
Yeah, through that link you're able to conjure them again, and basically that's their punishment, because as something we might know, D&D, death isn't the end. Your soul goes somewhere. And so that would mean that divine orders for paladins and stuff might be inclined to look for more, punishing and torturous, aspects of carrying out their divine duty, as opposed to just executing people. So it doesn't stop at death. Like, your punishment is that I get to call upon you to work in the opposite of what your alignment might normally be. So
metal.
It's really, yeah, it's so metal. And I just thought that would be cool.
And this is my hot take. I don't think that wizards should get access to Otherworldly Form or Spirit Shroud. I think that this works I think wizards get enough. Wizards have their own wizards get all the summoning spells. They get Acid Stream. You have enough. So I think that it really, and when would you use this as a wizard? Because a lot of times when you're talking your third level, you're now into fifth, maybe seventh level character as a wizard, there should be other things that you should be focused on. Like, to me, these two spells are more of a distraction for the wizard than they are like picks that are going to add function and flavor. So yeah. I love the idea of, are you dealing with souls? You're a cleric. As a wizard, you can make undead, but you don't get to mess with souls. You can try, but that's what the cleric's job is. So, and I'm one that's like, I'm cool with thematic overlap. So I'm cool if, like, some wizards get this, but to just pop all of these on the wizard list feels like wizard is now just generic. It doesn't have its own thing. Wizards should be about like study. They're about study and intelligence, and should be is a very harsh term. But like, I'm trying to think. What you do is you get 1d8 extra damage when you hit a creature. How many wizards make a lot of attack rolls? You know, that's not really their distinct play style or their ideal play style. A lot of times they're doing utility, or if they do a damaging spell, it requires a saving throw. So you wouldn't, and you're taking up your concentration slot when you could be concentrating on a wall of fire, or you could be concentrating on something that's more in the wizard's ball court, you know?
Yeah, more pertinent to the situation.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I can see that.
Yeah, the fact that the range on it is self is sort of the kicker here. Whereas I could see it expanding the wizard's role as a utility if it was another creature. But because it's range of self, you are the one getting these boons and getting these buffs. So you are the one making attacks. And so rarely, unless I'm a Bladesinger, would I be the one coming forward and striking. I think also, correct me if I'm wrong, Bladesingers would consume their bonus action to begin blade singing. So already you need to blade sing first, and then you can consume your bonus action later for Spirit Shroud. But that seems like the only appropriate time where that would come into play right now. I know I'm saying only, and that's a drastic generalization. However, it does seem like in terms of options that Otherworldly Form and Spirit Shroud, the wizard doesn't need them. There's already plenty that the wizard has access to, so I agree with that.
Well, and the last thing is, I think I'd be more forgiving if it was if they were on the sorcerer list too. So if it was one of those things like Sword Coast, where like they just made a bunch of spells and they're like, a lot of people could use them. Like, I think I would be a lot less harsh about the wizard specifically having them. But the fact they're like, hey, sorcerer, guess what you get? Acid Stream and 2 summon spells. Hey, wizard, guess what you get? This compendium of options.
I heard you like wizard in your wizard. Have some more wizard.
I don't know.
All right, now we're going to get into our summoning spells. We got a lot of different types and flavors and levels of them. So, first on our list is Summon Aberrant Spirit. This is a 4th level conjuration. 1 action, range 90 feet. It's got verbal, somatic, and material components, and it is a concentration spell up to 1 hour. You call forth a spirit from the far realm or another alien realm of madness. That's a nice open door for that. The spirit manifests physically in an unoccupied space that you can see within range. This corporeal form uses the Aberrant Spirit stack block below. When you cast the spell, choose Beholderkin, Sladi, or Starspawn. The creature physically resembles your choice, which also determines some of the traits in its stat block. The creature disappears when it drops to 0 hit points or when the spell ends. The creature is friendly to you and your companions for the spell's duration. In combat, it shares your initiative count, but it takes its turn immediately after yours. It obeys verbal commands that you issue to it, no action required by you. If you don't issue any, it defends itself, but otherwise takes no actions. If you cast this at higher levels, the creature assumes the higher level for that casting wherever it uses the spell's level in its stat block.
So this is a better Beastmaster than the Beastmaster, you're saying?
Yes.
Well, Beastmaster, we've talked about that before, where Beastmaster was kind of not our favorite, but there's a lot of ways you could fix it, and I feel like this pertains to like how that might have played out if they tried to fix it in 5e. I think this would be really good.
We've beaten the Beastmaster to death. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a running joke that's going to keep coming up.
Yeah.
Now, the Aberrant Spirit itself, the armor class is 11 plus the level of the spell. So you have natural armor. So if you cast at a higher level, this thing will have a higher AC. The hit points are equal to the aberration's Constitution modifier plus your spell casting ability modifier plus 10 times the spell's level. So it's another bonus there. Its speed is 30 feet, and it can fly 30 feet if it's the Beholderkin. Regular stat block is pretty nice. Charisma takes a hit, but most things have a nice bump. It is immune to psychic damage, has dark vision, passive perception 10, deep speech, and understanding your languages, and then it starts splitting off into what the others can do. So for Sladi, the aberration regains 10 hit points at the start of its turn if it has at least 1 hit point, so it has regeneration. If it's a star spawn, at the start of each of the aberration's turns, each creature within 5 feet of it must succeed on a wisdom save against your spell save DC, or take 3d6 psychic damage, provided that they aren't incapacitated, which would be a whispering aura. That's cool. Just passive things. And then their actions, the aberration makes a number of attacks equal to half this spell's level, rounded down. Huh. So at least 2, possibly 3, maybe 4, depending on which level you did this at. And then the Beholderkin has an eye ray, which is psychic damage. The Sladi has claws, which ends up being slashing damage, and it stops people from regaining hit points until the start of the aberration's next turn. And then the Star Spawn has psychic slam, which is just a slam that deals psychic damage. Huh.
Yeah, again, what are the storytelling implications of bringing Starspawn to this plane?
Oh,
Like,
gosh.
have you now let the Elder Evil know how to slip through the cracks?
I was going to say, Cuse is probably really happy about this spell.
Yeah.
The worm that walks, come on.
Oh gosh. I like the idea of being able to summon a Beholderkin, because those are so like iconic, where it's like, okay, we've seen this like over the ages of, or over the editions of D&D, but like what would happen now if like we had control over one of those things. So I think that would be pretty interesting, especially with, well, it has an eye ray. Yeah. I was going to say it doesn't have all the eye rays, but
No.
definitely
Summon Beholder.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be intense. And then it's like summon fiend, so you have to roll to see if you control it and that kind of thing. That would be so awful. But there was just a clarification here with the fly speed. It says fly speed 30 feet if it's a Beholderkin only, and then semicolon hover. So I'm just wondering what that is.
It just means that the Beholder has to hover. It
It's
got no legs, so it can't roll around either. It just
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I was gonna say. Like, oh, why it can't move? Like, hovers right there where you summon it. Okay, no, but yeah, this sounds really cool. Lots of psychic damage, which makes a lot of sense for aberrant spirits.
Yeah.
So I like exploring this theme throughout these UAs.
There's a lot of interesting math elements that are being put into play depending on what spell level you're. You can choose its AC. You can choose its hit points, basically by deciding what spell level you're using for this, and 4th and above. And I appreciate the passive bonuses. Looks like the Beholderkin doesn't gain any passive things. It has its eye ray and it hovers. And the passive thing is, I suppose, it can't be knocked prone because it's hovering, or it can fly. But the regeneration for the Sladi is very cool. And then the Whispering Aura for the Star Spawn makes it so you have a damage control or some level of control for things that are near it. So you can maneuver it near stuff, and just by it being there, it has an aura of psychic damage, which is neat. That it's just going to be doing no matter what.
Yeah, so one comment on the mathy thing is that, so this is tangential, but it might give us a clue on to what future UAs might look like, which is recently it was announced that D&D has a new has a new head at the kind of taking the helm of the RPG. So like Jeremy Crawford is still the lead rules designer,
but like down.
The person that he reports to is Ray Winninger, and his background, I think he had a lot to do with 3rd edition. I forgot. At one point I knew all this stuff, But it has been noted that he likes crunchier mechanics, and obviously that's not something that we see a lot in 5th edition. You know, 5th edition tries to streamline most of its mechanics.
Yeah.
But it might be why there's more math where it's like, you know, you have to figure out the spell's level, multiply it by 10, add it to all this stuff, and then you can kind of figure out how strong your spirit is. So it's one of those interesting things where at what point, and I'm finding this personally, like that conversation we had, which was like modules versus homebrew, it really stuck with me. So I'm doing a lot of homebrew right now, looking at the kind of the crunchier mechanics to see if that will improve the storytelling and improve the decision making that the players can have access to. So it's not just we take a long rest, we use our best ability, we take a long rest.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that becomes boring after a while. So the it's a little bit crunchier, and for certain players this will allow them a greater deal of control in the characters they want to play. For other players, this will create a massive slowdown, especially if they haven't queued their turn ahead of time. So if they're trying to do everything in the moment instead of planning ahead, then then this could really kind of upset the flow of a combat experience.
Yeah.
And I can see that a player that can think ahead, where they're like, you know what, I'm going to try to do my beholder thing. It's like I have like 2 turns to figure this out. They do the math quick, so they're just like, I summon my beholder. This is its stats. It uses its action. You know, like I can see how that this could be a really cool mechanic, but it just needs to be clear to the player that wants to use it. And a player should give a DM a heads up. They shouldn't. This isn't something that you spring on a DM because you want to try to be clever. You know, this is something that that there should be a conversation about.
Yeah,
right.
Not that there aren't spells that are like that, but yeah.
But this one,
I agree.
It does require a little bit of preparation, which is a good thing. This also lends itself well to we've had spell cards in the past, and when someone does a wild shape. It's important, druids out there, that if you're going to wild shape, that you have the monster stat block right there in front of you.
Yeah.
Just be like, I turn into a spider. I'm a spider now. What does a spider have for AC? I don't know. Like, there are resources that we can make sure that you have, or ask the DM, hey, I want to be able to wild shape. Can I have some monster things? Or, and having that level of homework is just a good thing no matter where we are in UA or official content. It's just good if you're going to be a caster to know what it is you're doing. And still, with these more crunchier mechanics, it's still more streamlined than previous editions and other systems.
Yep.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say before we move on about this, and this is a very personal thing, so with these summon spells, you have different levels that you're summoning. So like this one is a 4th level spell. The next one, which we'll look at, which is Bestial Spirit, that's a 2nd level spell. The highest leveled spelled one is the Fiend option, where it's like it's at 6th level, you get to summon a Fiend. This is just me. When I think of the Far Realm, I think of that as the most dangerous creatures you could fight. Like, yeah, the Hells are dangerous, but they are not more dangerous than Starspawn and Elder Evils,
Right,
so, like, at least we know what devils are. We know how to talk to them. Starspawn, they don't care. To us, we're just dust in the wind. Like, they're just like, food. Food that talks. It's tasty, So, to me, I would rather have the Aberrant one be the 6th level one, and have the Fiend and Celestial be kind of 5th level, so that you're like you said, Adam, this is giving us storytelling possibilities. It's clarifying the hierarchy of what the most dangerous things are in terms of the cosmology versus, other things that we know more about. At least we know what angels and devils are, Beholders, they're just weird. They're just psychic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And also that line of thinking, I completely agree with it, because from a study perspective, when you think about just the name Aberration, An aberration doesn't make sense. It is supposed to be the outer realms. We talk about the far realm, whereas we know about fiends, we know about demons and devils, like in the abyss and like the blood war. And when it comes to lore of the cosmology, those are like middle tier knowledge. Whereas aberrations and the aberrant world and the alien worlds and the elder evils, that's like top tier knowledge. The great wizards and great casters of the world know that stuff. So I completely agree. Wouldn't it track that the highest spell slots would be dedicated to aberrations? The ones that are just alien and weird,
Yeah.
they're definitely not normal in the grand scheme of the cosmology, and that's why they're aberrant. So I completely understand that mentality, and I almost want to rework the spell casting striation so that it makes more sense. Like in IO, the 6th level ones are all the aberrant spirit. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I would be fine with that.
It's
It's just
theming thing, but it also tracks based on our knowledge.
yeah, and it's like these like 20th level wizards or whenever they were whenever they were still alive anyway, they they had knowledge of this, but they still were scared of these guys. So it's like I have all this amazing power like wish and stuff, but like these guys, like I don't mess with them. They're pretty insane. And I like that idea of just like so what's it called, Lovecraft, HP Lovecraftian stuff. I haven't even read much material on that, and I still think it's an amazing perspective basically on cosmology.
Like from a storytelling perspective. Actually, I know you play Elder Scrolls, but do you play Fallout at all?
I don't play Fallout, but I've seen Fallout played.
So Fallout 4 especially, it might be in Fallout 3 too. Bethesda added a lot of Lovecraft references. So there's like an entire quest called Pickman's Gallery, which is based off of the short story Pickman's Model. And there's so many dungeons that are built specifically with that Lovecraftian flavor in mind.
And it's not even like a magic thing either. It's just the fact that nuclear radiation does stuff, and I think that's a pretty cool way to look at it for a more realistic escape.
Well, and it's also another reason these elder evils, these aberrations, are so terrifying is it has to do with their relation with us. So like a devil sees the value of a soul, not in that like the monetary value. So a devil is like doing its best to regard you as an individual and figure out what your desires are to manipulate that against you so that they can claim their soul for more value. An elder evil, if I scratch my back and I scratch a dust mite, I'm not sitting there like, oh, this dust mite's soul has value. It's nothing, So like a devil will at least recognize your value as a person, even though it's going to mess with you and do all sorts of evil, horrible things. But an elder evil doesn't even regard you as that. It's just, you're, again, just a speck. So it's like, how do you fight against something that massive in scale, that cosmological horror, not just personal horror,
I think that really reflects, just as the last thing on that for me, I think that really reflects one of our greatest fears is the fear of like, it's not the fear of insignificance, but it's the fear of like not having humanity being nothing, humanity being like pointless, It's showing what it's changing the perspective of our lives and whether or not they matter to the like furthest of extremes, where it's just, no, you don't matter, not to this guy. And that's just scary to people because it just makes it's like nihilism, It's just like, there is no point. We're all just,
no, but I mean, the greatest villain so far that I've been very pleased to run and build as a concept is the Elder Evil of the Worm That Walks. It is very Cthulhian in its construction, but Cuse is deep in the legacy of D&D, and he is a god of aberration and does not care. And it's because you look at the great stratification of these greater beings, and it's like, you guys are specks. Like, it doesn't matter. My desire is to consume, so I will consume. And it's, in a way, it's so simplistic, but it's also terrifying, because the creatures that would want to reason with that thing or be like, but why do you want to do that? But why? Because it is my will. And it's just, they're not there to be the faceless god. Like, you can't even talk to this thing. It just is. And that makes it so a lot of our choices, our abilities, our spells that would sort of coax a creature, turn them from the edge and like bring them over to our side or convince them of something, just don't work. So what do you do? And how, and I don't want the players to feel like powerless, but there is something just from our own like humanity that is a great fear of us, that inconsequentiality, that we ourselves are inconsequential to this thing. So how do you fight something that views you as inconsequential?
See, that's fascinating, because I feel like right before I move on to Bestial Spirit, the most satisfying villains I've ever run are the opposite, where they are so low level. Like the Cassalantars from Dragon Heist were, combat-wise, they weren't like super difficult, or like you guys weren't like, oh man, we're gonna die. But it was like, it was the fact that they had just like a small personal struggle. Well, small personal, like they were gonna sacrifice their children, but like it was like, the idea was that it was a small scale. Like, really, if they had gotten away, 100 people would have died versus the planet, you know? So like there's, you get that, you know, how big a scale is the story you're telling? And the other one was the vampire from Cursed Castle. He really, his struggle, he had like, it was just him. He was the only one that needed to be saved. It's like, if the players had ignored him and just gone home, he would have been the only one that would have suffered more because of it. So it was just like a really small scale side thing. Those were the characters I felt I ran the best and were the most satisfying in terms of a story. So it's really fascinating, you know, what people kind of like respond to.
And what I'm finding is, it's interesting to explore that realm of thinking in that way, that it is so simple, and in a way it's strange and fascinating for me to then watch how do the players respond to something that is the hard place. It's between a rock and a hard place. How do you fight that? But then it has been so cool to run the personal, intimate relationships of Grey Owls, where you're dealing with a lot more information as currency, information as weapon. And then you have people who are gray, that are complex, that you could actually reason with and try to figure things out. And you guys haven't met Nomad yet, really. And there's a lot of complexity to Nomad. And there's a lot of complexity to the airship captains and what they're doing and where their views are and why they're doing it. And that's really satisfying to me to build those things. But when it comes to, like, those are medium creatures, those are critters in the material plane. Mm-hmm. When you start thinking about these extraplanar beings that look down on us as ants, it's a weird thing to then flip-flop into those views and try to figure out what their flaws are, so that those flaws can be exploited, and what those traits can be, so that they can be exploited by the characters, that they are defeatable. Whereas if you look at it just as straight idea of this thing, they could look impossible. And that's a thing that has value. We've gone on a tangent.
No, it's there's one little fact I wanted to see. So I'm not finding it. But I wanted to have data to just show it. But all right, so I said, as a person, if I try to scratch my shoulder and I kill a dust mite,
Yeah.
doesn't even register.
Yeah.
How many people die from dust mites every year where it actually gives them like a heart attack? And it's a big number.
It is.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like there's like a dust mite allergy. And I can't, that's why I wanted like the statistic. But
Yeah.
just because something is so small and insignificant that you don't really consider it doesn't mean it's not a danger. You know?
Yeah.
So
And
like
that
if it's
could
a
be the
small little
flaw.
spider, you might have a small little spider and be like, I can just squish it. And if it bites you, it might kill you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
when role-playing the worm that walks, it wants to consume, it has its will, but you still might have player characters that can like deal it serious damage,
Yeah.
you know, because it doesn't regard them as a threat. So it's not necessarily even arrogance as much as ignorance ends
Yeah.
up being the thing. And obviously as like a person, you can't worry about so much, you end up paralyzed. But it's one of those really fascinating things. You know, something so small can do so much.
Yeah.
So anyway,
That's our view on
moving on
aberrations.
to- moving on to the next one, because that was one section. We have Summon Bestial Spirit. So this is a second level conjuration. Same casting time, same range. The only difference with the components is this one you need a gilded acorn worth at least 200 instead of a crystal vial worth 4. The duration is the same. Now for this one, unlike the aberrant spirit, you could like have 3 options. The 3 options for this one is you can summon a beast spirit of air, land, or water. And the creature physically resembles an animal of your choice that's native to your chosen environment. What I like about this is building off of the framework from the class feature variant UA with the Beastmaster, where as a beast companion, you could choose to have a beast of land or a beast of earth that you could customize. This adds in a beast of water. And it has the same kind of crunchy mechanic. So like the beast's armor class is 11 plus the level of the spell and all that stuff. As you're moving through it, so if you choose a water spirit, it can breathe air and water. If it's an air spirit, it doesn't provoke opportunity attacks when it flies out of an enemy's reach. The land and water ones have pack tech, and they also have different speeds based on which one you want to choose. So the air one has a fly speed, the land one has a climb speed, the water one, of course, has swim speed. They also have multi-attack, which I don't think the other one did. Oh, no, it did. A number of attacks equal to half the spell's level rounded down. So they've got multi-attack, and they have the maul attack too. So I just like it because any ranger can pick up the bestial spirit. So it's almost like any character can be a beastmaster now. You can just ignore that archetype because you can just spend your second level spell slot to have your spirit help you fight. And I'm sure, like, what I would do as a dungeon master is I would have it be your spirit exists in a small form with you at all times, kind of like a familiar. So you've got like a little buddy, and when it fights, you can use the second level spell slot, and it transforms into like fight mode, combat mode, you know, kind of like an anime. So it's like Agumon Digivolve 2, something that can do something.
Or even like those magic items, like I forget what they're called, the like wondrous items that are like small, like a swarm of flies or like a spider, like they're little figurines. I can't remember what they're called.
Yeah,
exactly.
The figurines of power.
That's what they are, yeah. It's kind of like that, where you carry it with you all the time, and then you spend an action to throw out your Pokeball and summon your creature. And I think that's pretty cool. I was going to say, so just in the description, without having read the stat block, I was super excited for like half a second because I was like, ooh, you can get like a water spirit that is native to like the ocean. I'm going to summon a whale. Like, that would just be so funny. Just like, you just like hold out your hand and just, there's a whale. And it just falls on your enemies. Like, kind of like the horse
whale bomb.
Yeah.
Well, you could get a whale. It'd just be a small whale instead of like a whale-sized whale.
Like a tiny whale. But I just thought that would be so funny because of this meme I saw back a while ago. It's like, where did you get a whale? It's like, you're welcome.
Or like, you're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. So I did it bad. That's what I meant. But yeah, I just thought that would be funny. We could continue.
These are nice pieces. After this, you get into celestial areas. So summon Celestial Spirit is a 5th level conjuration. Casting time is 1 action. A golden reliquary worth at least 500 gold pieces. Oh boy. And it's a concentration up to 1 hour. So you call forth a spirit from the upper planes. The spirit manifests physically in an angelic form in an unoccupied space you can see within range, so 90 feet. Within 90 feet, geez. This corporeal form uses the Celestial Spirit stat block below. When you cast a spell, choose Avenger or Defender. Your choice determines the creature's attack in its stat block and disappears when it drops to 0. It's friendly to you and all that jazz. It follows the same framework as what we're working with before, and you can cast it at a higher spell slot. The Celestial Spirit is a large celestial, neutral good. Its armor class increases with the spell level, hit points, same deal. It moves 30 feet and then flies 40. It's got some pretty beefy stats at this point. It's resistant to radiant damage, it's immune to being charmed or frightened, and it has multi-attack. Equal to half the spell's level, rounded down. So it starts with 2, you can go higher. Now the Avenger has a bow, the Defender has a mace. So the Avenger has a radiant bow, which is dealing radiant damage plus the spell's level, which is nice. It's like a great sword as a bow. And then the mace is similar in that way. It's a D10 plus 3 plus the spell's level in radiant damage. And when the Defender hits something, it can choose itself or another creature it can see within 10 feet of the target. The chosen creature gains temporary hit points equal to the damage dealt, provided it doesn't already have temporary hit points. And then it also gets Healing Touch once a day, regardless of which one it is. And they touches another creature, and the target magically regains hit points equal to 2d8 plus the spell's level.
What I like about this is I think so my mom recently played a light cleric in a game that I ran, and she was always casting Guardian of Faith, and it never did anything because what she thought the spell did versus what the spell did were two different. She thought she was summoning a Guardian that would float over and help her fight, but no, she summons a Guardian that sits there. And if something else goes near it, then the Guardian takes a swing. Right. So, like, this is, like, what she was thinking of, was I get to summon a Guardian Spirit that will fight with me and either use its bow attack or use its mace to hit things.
Yeah.
So, I do think that this has a place, especially in the Cleric's Toolkit, when you're trying to do things like create additional targets that can overwhelm. By the way, all these things are flanking fodder too, which I haven't brought up. But basically, if it's like, I don't want to go there, but the rogue needs to sneak attack, we'll send the Celestial Spirit that way. And just kind of sit there and flank.
This thing's large too. You might get some more opportunities.
It kind of reminds me of this anime called Overlord, where the whole premise is that this guy is super overpowered, so nothing can kill him. But he does encounter a celestial spirit that is large like this. Obviously, he wins, but like that's kind of what I imagine, where you're summoning that kind of thing. One of the things that I liked is that these material components, we often, or at least I as a player, often forego material components because, of course, I have a spellcasting focus and it's just limiting factors if I have to use material components from a components pouch. But I just was thinking lately with all these conjuring things, how interesting would it be if you made it so that, like, for some of these higher level things, you do need material components, kind of like with Revivify, because of the act of magic that you're performing, just due to its nature. I feel like it would make it more kind of storytelling. Like, you know, it's not just me waving my wand and being like, celestial appear. It's me performing this significant like ritual almost. There has to be a sacrifice. You have to give up at least something worth 500 gold pieces or whatever, because you're interacting with things that have their own will. Like we said before, what did the summons think when you summon them there? Like, oh, we're in combat. Like,
I was in the middle of making cookies and you brought me here? Oh, man.
Exactly. And I just think it's pretty interesting how that works. This also reminds me of, I think it was Unity Cleric, where you, like, if something goes down or is reduced to 0 hit points, you get all these amazing buffs as your capstone. I feel like this could also be, something to use for that kind of thing too. So it could be very cleric oriented for a Unity Cleric.
I like that.
There was something else, but I don't remember.
That's okay. This one, it doesn't consume the reliquary. So you just have to have one that's like a really nice reliquary. Whereas opposed to like a diamond which the spell consumes. So you can have like a reliquary set aside that says, this is going to summon my buddy Angel Michael, and you bring out your reliquary. But I do like that. Like sometimes I'll use material components as little clues inside the world building. They're just other opportunities. Some groups are totally into that, and some groups don't care. But it's kind of cool to go into like a magic shop and have them have, spell scrolls or books of spells set aside, or you can go into their personal arcane lab and see like a golden reliquary with a name in Celestial inscribed upon it. I wonder what that's for. And that would be for summoning their celestial spirit. And what if they stole that? And there would be a neat story element. And maybe it wasn't a celestial spirit. Maybe it was made to look that way. Instead, it looks like you're summoning a fiend, and it's all different and stuff. I don't know. But there's an object. But there's an object that's connected to whatever the spell is. And I have some groups that really like the wizard aspect of all of this, where the wizard collects those components and has a component pouch, and they really want to get into the role playing of I pull out this component, and then that component, and getting that component had a story. So they could cast the spell. They might know the spell, but they don't have the component yet. So it becomes a quest for them to get that component that can really add layers to their story.
Yeah, and my last bit there is you can also go the other way, where they have the component, but normally they forego material components because they have a staff or something. And it's like there's a lot of combat scenarios where we never really acknowledge the fact that you can take their focus away from them, like as an enemy. Like you can go and intentionally see if you can get a hold of whatever their focus is and just like break it, or even, well, breaking it might be a little harsh, but like taking it away from them. And that debilitates casters who have spells that are very material component heavy. So I think that would be pretty interesting, because it's obvious that you're a caster and you have arcane focus when you're casting spells at me all the time. Like, it's not a mystery who's the caster. Oh, how do I pick the barbarian? That one's the caster. But yeah, I just exactly. So I think that also opens up the opportunity for the DM to work something into the middle of combat, where you are forced to use that like last resort material component reliquary thing to summon your angel, because whoops, no more arcane focus. So yeah,
the other thing, because I agree that components are something that are underutilized in D&D. And a lot of times they're just really more of like a flavor choice. Like, do you channel your magic through your wand, or do you channel it through this other component thing? So one of the things I've done, especially homebrew wise lately, is components are absolute. Like, I don't want to punish a player. And a lot of times by honoring one player's wishes, you do a disservice to other players. So if it's like, I want to go search for components, that means now we're going to take three hours away from everybody else's game time to honor your story, you know? And to me, you don't want to do that either, because now there's an imbalance of who's getting the most amount of enjoyment out of the experience. So for me, what I did is, people tend to have arcane focuses. So you can have a component pouch if you want, but if you want to build an alchemical product, a potion that replicates the effect of a spell, or a bomb that replicates the effect of a spell, you need to have the component for a one-use thing that anyone can use. Yeah. So it's like, do you want to have an enlarged thing, but you don't want the wizard to spend their turn casting enlarge, but you're cool with the ranger drinking the potion, you know? Well, you're going to need to find iron powder that you can mix with a hard alcohol and alchemy powder to create this nasty tasting potion that then can go a lot, that can give you that spell effect. So that way when you have your components, like you still get that component play, but the party is being rewarded by it instead of a player being rewarded by it. Mm-hmm. So it's like you as a party are going to search for this really rare component so that you can make bombs out of it, and anyone can use these bombs, you know? So
it still lends value to the existence of the component, and the idea that magic has a study to it. That there is in the same way that an alchemy should have a study. You have this, this ratio of this stuff in these things for this potion. Magic has a study to it that you need to know how the spell works in order to cast it. So a way to mass produce it, that's another way to use those components. I like that a lot. So continuing up is Summon Elemental Spirit. This is a 4th level conjuration. Takes an action within 90 feet, verbal, somatic, and material. So you need air, a pebble, ash, and water inside a crystal vial worth at least 400 gold, and its concentration up to 1 hour. So you call forth a spirit from the elemental planes. The spirit manifests physically in an unoccupied space. This is a corporeal form, uses the elemental spirit stat block, and when you cast it, you choose an element: air, earth, fire, or water. The creature physically resembles a vaguely humanoid form wreathed in the chosen element, which also determines some of the traits in its stat block. And it follows the same ideas as everything else, including the raised spell slot for increasing some of its stats. This is a medium elemental and is neutral. Armor class goes up with spell level, hit points as well. However, it can move 40 feet, and air only will fly 40 feet. Earth only can burrow 40 feet, and water only can swim 40 feet. These are pretty beefy physical stats, like high strength, high con, low intelligence, but everything else is pretty good. And is resistant to lightning and thunder if it's air, piercing and slashing if it's earth, or acid if it's water. It is immune to poison, and immune to fire if it's fire. There's a lot of little clarifications there, but it's also they're immune. All of them are immune to being exhausted, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, or unconscious, which is funny. Not incapacitated, but unconscious. And then they have dark vision, primordial, and is an amorphous form. So air, fire, and water, not earth. The elemental can move through a space as narrow as 1 inch wide without squeezing, which tracks. I mean, if they're made of air, fire, or water, you can just slide between spaces. Earth just can't do that. You get multi-attack. They make a number of attacks equal to half the spell's level, rounded down, and they are slam attacks. So we got usually 1d10 plus 4 plus the spell's level of bludgeoning damage for air, earth, and water. And if they're fire elemental, they deal fire damage of the same amount. You get to get a cool elemental spirit, but they're medium, not large.
I'm going to sound repetitive, but this is a 4th level spell slot, which means that elementals are on the same level as aberrations, and I think that's wrong.
I think that is baloney.
Yeah, more like on the same level, if not lower to me, as like, oh wait, the Celestial's way higher. As like the Beast. I had to look it up again. Yeah, Beast is 2nd level. or elemental goes up to 4th level. Like, that's skipping a whole level. Like, you might as well have that be, and then Fey Spirit, as we'll see soon, is 3rd level. So you might as well have it at 3rd level as well, because like you said, it should be dependent on basically the range from the material plane. That's how dangerous something should be.
Yeah.
Like, where you normally find it, it should increase the further away you get, which actually is an idea in some Gnostic philosophies and religions in the real world, which is pretty interesting. So, if I was the DM and I was using these spells in my games, I would probably move them around a bit just to make it seem cooler, to be honest.
I mean, I could see like beasts would be, I think, the closest because they're in the material plane. Undead because you're stretching the brand of life, but the components you're working on, the materials are usually material plane. And then elementals because you're surrounded by the elemental chaos, and then like celestial and fiends, and then aberrations. Like, aberrations should be the top. Celestials and fiends would be the same level, in my opinion. And then elemental, undead, beast. And it's like, that's the stratification that I could see. And that's just based on knowledge, like the access of knowledge. Beasts, undead, elementals, like, that's still material plane idea. They're the closest to what we know today. And then celestials and fiends should be at the same level, and aberrations are out there.
Yeah.
It seems like the entire system of levels as we go through this are just weird. And then we have Fey, and Fey is Feywild. And undead would be Shadowfell, basically. I mean, you're kind of drawing from those areas. So undead would be at the same level as Fey, which might be actually correct looking at this. I think as we continue through this, we've already expressed the levels are wonky in terms of how you would approach this. And as I'm putting together Ionian lore and putting together like a huge document of the reference document of everything in Io, especially the 6th Age, I might even put reference into this UA that says, hey, for these summoning spells, these are the levels you actually get them, and this is why. And just adjust the level system just to reflect that. I might also have to change their power levels if that's what I do, though, because you do get certain boons depending on the levels that you casting these at.
No, absolutely. And I first of all, I just want to say I can't wait to read that if I ever get a chance to read it. But second of all, I think that this would also be a really cool thing to do what we were talking about with the beast, where you have like a familiar almost. I know that elementals are much more neutral and they don't like really, stick to people as much as like beasts or, for example, Fae do. Well, but it would still be pretty interesting to have like a Will-o'-the-Wisp almost. Well, Will-o'-the-Wisp, I'm pretty sure those are undead, but like a little flame, for example, if you have a fire elemental, that just kind of follows you around. And it's just like, you know what it's like? It's like Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle. Very much like that. Yeah, that would be super cool.
Yeah. In my Feywild campaign, I have a character that has a little ember critter that's attached to her horns on her tiefling character. And we've discovered that this thing, the Feywild is full of primal spirits and it's full of elemental spirits. And this is just a little guy that he wakes up. You have to like cast fire on him and he wakes up and he'll do stuff. But as he grows throughout the campaign and they get stronger and he gets stronger, I think now seeing the spell in action, he might be able to become this elemental spirit. So he's hanging out on her head, and when she wants him to, fight or do something cool, she could cast this spell and he would then manifest into battle form. He would digivolve and then you go fight and then he would go back to the little form that hangs out on her horns. And that would be another cool way to also bring it into play through the Ionian Feywild, but also to test out this stuff and make a story reason why it would exist.
Absolutely.
Cool.
No, that sounds, that just makes me want to play in the Feywild game someday because, as we all know, I love the Fey. I just love the themes and everything. Oh
Ian,
my gosh.
You want to read this next one because you love the Fey so much?
Yes, yes, I do. Ah. All right, so this next one is Summon Fey Spirit, and it is a third level conjuration spell. Of course, it requires an action, 90 feet and stuff. Your material components are a gilded flower worth at least 300 gold pieces, which I think is very thematically appropriate.
High gold content in these spells. Anyway.
Yeah, actually, very on par with like Revivify and stuff, actually. Um, let's see here. So you call forth a spirit from the Feywild. The spirit manifests physically in an unoccupied space, of course, and it has a corporeal form. And using the Fey spirit stat block below, you can conjure one that is deceitful, furious, or joyful, depending on the mood that you choose. Can resemble like a satyr, a dryad, or an elf. I thought this was weird, but yeah, you get an elf, and this is a small creature, so it's like a Santa's elf, and yeah, that's dependent on the chosen mood. Of course, if it drops 0 hit points, disappears, and it's friendly to you and your companions, and all the other things that we've mentioned before. Now, of course, it gets armor class 11 plus all the spell modifiers and all that. Some hit points and some very interesting stuff. Speed of 40 feet and condition immunities of being charmed. It's got dark vision. Any languages that you speak and Sylvan are the ones that it can do. So this would actually be pretty interesting if you're in the Feywild and nobody speaks Sylvan, and for some reason the Fey refuse to speak Common to you because it's like, well, I don't care. Like, you have to learn my language, like all that kind of thing. And this is pretty cool. They get Fey Step as a bonus action, which means that they can magically teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that it can see. And this Fey Step gets augmented depending on its mood. So you get Darkening Step for the deceitful Fey. Immediately after using its Fey Step, the Fey can fill a 5-foot cube within 5 feet of it with magical darkness, which remains until the Fey's next turn, the end of the Fey's next turn. Then you have the Ecstatic Step. The Ecstatic Step, which is for the joyful one. Immediately after using its Fey Step, the Fey can choose a creature it can see within 10 feet of it and force it to succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC or be charmed by the Fey for 1 minute. The charm ends if the Fey or any of its companions deals damage to the target, which means that they don't get to make another saving throw, which is pretty nice. And finally, there's Impassioned Step for the Furious Fey. Immediately after using its Fey Step, the Fey has advantage on its next attack roll before the end of its turn. Lastly, of course, it has multi-attacks, and it uses a short sword, which is got all its relevant modifiers and such, and does force damage.
Force
in addition to piercing.
Now, immediately, are you going to do the Devil's Sight thing?
No, I was going to say, Ian brought up an excellent story thing, which is what happens if the Fae aren't talking to you? This is the first one we're talking about where you're kind of on the same, you can reasonably travel to the same plane as the thing you're summoning. So I just imagine there's all these little Santa elves that are like only speaking Sylvan and they won't speak to you. So you try to use Summon Fey Spirit and it just pops one of them out of their group and next to you, and it has to be friendly to you, but it's like, so you pick Joy,
man!
But now it can translate for you, and you're just like, all right, tell them what we want. Like,
yeah. No, absolutely.
You have to come from somewhere. You're summoning them.
Yeah.
So what if you're on the same plane that you're summoning them from? They just pop over to your side.
Yeah, it's not create Fey, like produce flame or create water. You're literally just dragging them over. Not even just summoning them. I can just imagine like you pointing at one and being like, that one, and it just drags them to you.
Oh. Yeah, that's what
They're just like,
thinking. No, wait. Oh man. Okay, so anyway.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I also like so that's hilarious, first and foremost. Feywild team, try it. It'll be hilarious. And won't come back to bite you ever. Now, because how do they feel when you just, I deputize you? and you now need to work for me.
Well, and I think we've talked about it before. The conjure spells are the same way. Like when you
Yeah.
conjure woodland beings, you're conjuring fey spirits that take the shape of an animal. So
Yeah.
like one of my friends who also ran Tomb of Annihilation, he had one of his players do conjure woodland spirits so he could summon like 8 gorillas and he used it as trap fodder. So he would just say, "You gorilla, go step on that landmine." So he was basically just conjuring these fey spirits to have them die for him so he wouldn't have to deal with the it's like, how did the fey look at you now? Like, so they ended up this character became a demigod in fey lore of like a creature of pointless destruction, because that's how they would imagine you get plucked into another plane of existence, told magically that you have to go run on a landmine and blow up, and then you pop back into the real world like nothing happened. Like you
But oh my gosh, and
Yeah.
like I like that, but I also like the idea of the Fae taking revenge on whoever summoned them. So like at the end of the Tomb of Annihilation, assuming that character survives, they just like at the end there's a portal just opens up next to them and they get grabbed like by like several tiny hands and just dragged into it, and then
Yeah.
they're never seen again because they got taken into
It's all the little
Feywild.
dryads that you summoned millions of times and just, all right, buddy, your turn. You know,
Yeah.
we've made an elaborate Ninja
Uh,
Warrior course of death for you to run for our amusement. Go.
Yeah.
That would be a really fun little
Essentially.
one shot, actually. I was going to mention
yeah.
mechanically, the deceitful one, especially in creating a 5-foot cube within 5 feet of it with magical darkness, that you could have them face step and then give that to the warlock with Devil's Sight, and then they can attack from an unseen space, which would be great.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be just for enemies for that.
Sorry, that's gonna combine nicely with the next one too.
Yes. So at this point, Summon Fiendish Spirit is a 6th level conjuration. Our highest conjuration, it's wonky. Casting time is 1 action, 90 feet away. The material component for this is humanoid blood inside of ruby vial worth at least 600 gold, and it's our regular concentration. So you call forth a fiendish spirit from the lower planes. The spirit manifests physically. It is corporeal and uses its stat block. Now, when you cast the spell, you choose Demon, Devil, or Yugoloth. The creature physically resembles a fiend of the chosen type, and that determines some of its traits as well. It's friendly to you, shares its initiative count, all that good stuff. Now, this thing is a large fiend. It is chaotic evil if it's demon, lawful evil if it's devil, and neutral evil if it's Yugoloth. The armor class works as normal, and the hit points, of course. It has 40 feet of speed. If it's a demon, it climbs 40 feet as well. If it's a devil, it can fly 60 feet. Stats are all right. Damage resistance is to fire, immunities to poison, and cannot be poisoned. They have dark vision, passive perception, speaking abyssal, infernal, and have telepathy up to 60 feet. These guys have magic resistance. The fiend has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. The demon gets death throws. When the fiend drops to 0 hit points or the spell ends, the fiend explodes, and each creature within 10 feet of it must make a dex save against your spell save DC. A creature takes 2d10 plus this spell's level of fire damage on a failed save and half as much on a successful one. The devil gets Devil's Sight, so magic darkness doesn't impede the fiend's dark vision. Yugoloths don't gain any extra stuff. It has multi-attack. Number of attacks equal to half the spell's level, rounded down. A demon gets Bite, a Yugoloth gets Claws, and the devil gets Hurl Flame. So Bite deals necrotic damage. The Claws are dealing slashing damage. And immediately after the attack hits or misses, the fiend can magically teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space it can see. So the Yugoloth can move around the board a bit. And then Hurl Flame for the devil is a ranged spell attack of 150 feet away. 2d6 plus 3 plus the spell's level and fire damage. The others Now, I'm not mentioning the damage for everything, but if the target is a flammable object that isn't being worn or carried, it also catches fire. I like the idea of when you get a demon, it's this kind of like feral that's going to rush up and bite you. Then the Yugoloth is going to teleport around and slash people, and then the devil's just in the back going boom and hurling balls of flame and blasting for you.
The claw one specifically stands out to me because remember you have at least 3 attacks because it's a 6th level conjuration, and it can teleport after every one of those attacks. So it can go in, slash, teleport, slash. Like the Yugoloth doesn't really get a lot else, because if you look at what the Fiend or Spirits get, Death Throes are for demons, Devil's Sight is for devils, but that it must mean that teleporting mechanic is worth that much, because you're not getting all the other stuff. So that's quite something.
Yeah, and I like this. I like being able to summon large creatures, because like that's something we often like not really pay attention to, is like the size of the thing that you're summoning. But like just imagine like the enemy blinks and the next second there's a 10 by 10 large creature towering over them, throwing fire and just like screaming at them. Like I could just imagine how cool that would be to witness just in general. Like maybe I'd have the enemy roll for like a wisdom save or be frightened. But there's another thing here where we were talking about like material components again. It says it's humanoid blood inside a ruby vial worth 60 or 600 gold pieces at least. And I was just thinking about how demons and devils differ in their like mental or their mindset. So like the devils might be more concerned that it's like a gold cost and like that has actual value, whereas the demons might be more concerned with the blood cost, and that it's like actually like something they're interested in. This is like outside of like, canon lore and stuff like that, because obviously it still needs, according to the spell, it still needs to be blood. It still needs to be 600 gold pieces. But from like a storytelling perspective, it would just be interesting for in my head for it to have some sort of impact. Like if you try to cheat the devil or something and use like this stuff, that's not quite what it says in the spell description, but it'll do because it's still worth this amount to the devil. So that kind of thing.
I really want to try this spell out to and use it with the Yugoloth, because the Yugoloth doesn't get a lot of the other bonuses that demon or devil would get, but I really want to exploit that mobility and see how crazy that could get. Because a number of attacks equal to half the spell's level rounded down, so he could do that 4 times at maximum, where he slashes and then teleports, and then the other one being, of course, hurling flame at 150-foot range, just going boom, boom, boom. I can see why, when you were away, John, Ian and I were sort of bringing up the idea of what it, based on our idea where the stratification is of your base of knowledge of the different planar critters, if we kind of reworked where the spells would be, and this would be a 5th level conjuration for me, because celestials and fiends are at the same level in terms of knowledge, and whether we would have to make adjustments based on its power level, like what you get from it, if we decided to do that. But that's maybe even a discussion for a different time. But I like your idea of trying to reset where you would get these, so that it opens up aberrations on top. Okay. Up next is the Summon Shadow Spirit. It's a 3rd level conjuration. It's 1 action, 90 feet. I'm just going through the materials for these. Tears inside a crystal vial. Worth at least 300 gold, and it's another concentration spell. So you're getting a shadowy spirit from the Shadowfell. And I like that it's a 3rd level conjuration. You're getting closer, and tracks at the same spot as where a Fae would be. So you're undead and Fae are all in the same line of power level. And when you cast a spell, you choose an emotion: fury, despair, or fear. The creature physically resembles a misshapen humanoid marked by the chosen emotion, which also determines some of its traits and all of our regular stuff. So now, Shadow Spirit is a medium monstrosity. It's neutral evil. Armor class and hit points follow our same track. It is 40 feet fast and is resistant to necrotic, immune to being frightened. Dark vision out to 120 feet, so superior dark vision. It speaks common and understands the languages you speak. And now, so we had fury, despair, or fear. So Bloodthirsty Frenzy is given to Fury. The spirit has advantage on attack rolls against frightened creatures. Shadow Stealth is given to Fear. While in dim light or darkness, the spirit can take the hide action as a bonus action. Weight of Ages, Despair only. Any beast or humanoid other than you that starts its turn within 5 feet of the spirit has its speed reduced by 20 feet until the start of that beast or humanoid's next turn. The spirit makes a number of attacks equal to half this spell's level, rounded down. And you have a Chilling Rend. So it's a spell's level, +3 plus the spell's level to hit with the reach of 5 feet. It's 2d8 +3 plus the spell's level of cold damage. And they all get a Dreadful Scream, which is once per day. Each creature within 30 feet of it must succeed on a Wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC or be frightened of the spirit for 1 minute, which sets up the Fury.
Bloodthirsty, yeah.
The Bloodthirsty thing, yep. The frightened creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success.
I like Dreadful Scream. I think it's yeah, like you said, it sets up the other one. I'm just comparing it to the Fey Spirit one, where you can have the Joyful Fey charm somebody and they can't get out of the charm, which is pretty interesting, like unless you hit them or whatever.
Right.
But I like that idea. I think it plays thematically and balance-wise better in their respective things. I was just making a comparison between the two. I was like, is this better? Is this worse? I think it fits in no matter what, really. So yeah, I think that'll be really cool.
I like the Weight of Ages in particular just because there's no save involved. So it starts its turn within 5 feet of the spirit. So if you had somebody come up to the spirit and start whacking on it and they stayed there, it's like their not even vitality, but their momentum is being sapped. So they could still move away, but a creature with 30 feet of movement now has 10 for a little while.
Which allows the spirit to chase it.
Yeah, and it's a level of control. It's going to impede their movement across the board. So if you're in a solo fight and you have your spirit, yeah, they'll definitely be able to chase them. And if you're in a big group or your party, they now can only move 10 feet, so everybody can catch up with them and wail on them.
See, that's looking at these options actually makes me want to play a warlock. And that sounds really mean, but what I mean is, like, so oftentimes I'll look at the warlock abilities and I'll be like, if I can just pick up Eldritch Blast, I can do a Sorlock build where I'm using sorcery points, I'm changing out what spells do what. But if I know that at 3rd level I can get a friend so that I can be doing my stuff, but I don't get a bonus action every turn, but I at least have like another creature I can control so that way we're working together. Mm-hmm. That's a distinct play style that you don't like, that isn't necessarily optimized for every character, So mm-hmm. like from this list, Paladin's optimal thing is to do the spirit, whatever it's called, Spirit Shroud, and then the otherworldly form, it can't do otherworldly form, but like the Paladin gets Spirit Shroud, and that optimally blends in with its distinct play style. With Wizard, yeah, you can make a summonee wizard, but there's more than one way to play a wizard, With this, it's like, I can see this being the warlock thing to do, where it's like, start the fight, get my buddy, then we're going to team up on him, And to me, it also, that summon spell is like an additional connection to your patron. So I was looking over what the Warlock gets, and as summon options, it gets Fey, Shadow, and Undead.
Yeah.
And because of that, now, to me, what I would do, just for if I'm playing an Archfey Warlock, I'm going to pick the Summon Fey Spirit. And it's almost like the patron has, like, gives you someone to check in on you, and to make sure, and I'm thinking of, like, Alucard from Hellsing, how he has the Hound that kind of moves with him. Like, I would pick this Shadow Spirit and just flavor it as being a Hound, but having these things that fit with that unique kind of evil play style.
Mhm.
So it just gives me one more thing to kind of consider as we're, like, looking at stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, I was just gonna say, I agree. As somebody who's played Warlock a bit, I find I most enjoy Hexblade Warlock when it comes to full Warlock and stuff. And this would actually really lend itself to that, because then you can impose flanking. You can have these massive debuffs against the enemy as well. And it actually gives you something. If you're not going to go the Eldritch Smite route, which I really like, it gives you something to really, use your spell slots on that's, like, worth it, basically, because you have so few spell slots. Yes, they're always going to be doing top tier damage, but, like, what if you just get counterspelled, right? Like, what if you're about to, cast, or I don't have a good example, but, like, a really damaging spell, then, like, what, like, is it going to be worth it? Well, in this one, you summon a buddy, and they help you out, and it gives you more to work with, not just in terms of story, but, like, in a rewarding combat scenario. So I think this is definitely you're like right on point there, John. This is definitely a really good, exciting new thing to do for Warlocks.
The narrative invocation, there's a lot of great narrative opportunities when you start to think about why you would have this and what this does. And when you connect it to, like, a Warlock, I was thinking immediately, what if you just had, like, a sad buddy that was walking around with you, which is the Despair Shadow Spirit that's just there. Hey guys, how's it going? But in the similar vein, that as like a reward or a friend to hang out with you, that is there, that you could have story narrative conversations with, that can act as another connection to, say, your patron, or another plane of existence, even just at that basic level. But then when you want them in combat mode, you can use the spell. And I kind of like that idea, that if you are also communicative with your DM, saying, I want to be able to have this communication and have this flavor, it doesn't break anything, and if it just increases the level of immersion, and they still have to cast the spell to then bring the critter out as something that's going to have powers and effect, which is cool. Now, continuing onward, with our last one for our spell list here, is Summon Undead Spirit. Another third level necromancy spell. One action, 90 feet, a gilded humanoid skull worth at least 300 gold, and concentration up to an hour. You call forth a restless spirit from beyond the grave. And this thing, when you summon them, you choose the creature's form of ghostly, putrid, or skeletal. And they will physically resemble a humanoid with the chosen form. It disappears when it drops to 0, and all of our regular stuff. Now, the undead spirit is a medium undead. It is neutral evil, AC and hit points as normal. Speed is 30 feet, and the ghost can fly 40. It is immune to immune to necrotic damage and poison damage, and immune to being exhausted, being frightened, paralyzed, or poisoned. It has dark vision up to 60 feet, and it can speak common and understands your languages. The ghost has incorporeal movement, so the undead can become incorporeal or moving and pass through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. If it ends its turn inside an object, it is shunted to the nearest unoccupied space and takes 1d10 force damage for every 5 feet traveled. The putrid one has a festering aura. Any creature other than you that starts its turn within 5 feet of the undead, I like that they said other than you, must succeed on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC, or be poisoned until the start of its next turn. This critter has number of attacks equal to half the spell's level, rounded down. and then we get different types of attacks. So the ghostly one
combine
gets
that with Mercy Monk.
Mm.
That's like all its abilities have to do with the poison condition.
Yeah.
And just get your buddy to send their putrid thing and just stand next to somebody.
That sounds great.
Just throw your knives at the poison person.
That's perfect. So ghostly one gets Deathly Touch, which is +3 plus spells level, 1d8 +3 plus spells level, necrotic damage, and they have to succeed on a Wisdom saving throw against their spell save DC or be frightened until the end of the target's next turn. A Grave Bolt is for Skeletal. It's a ranged spell attack, range of 150 feet, and it's necrotic damage. And then the Rotting Claw is a melee weapon attack for the Putrid one, and it is slashing damage. However, if the target is poisoned, it must succeed on a con save against your spell save DC or be paralyzed until the end of its next turn. Out of all three of these options, Putrid feels the most awesome to me. It's setting up a lot more.
I think it also depends on your team comp a little, because I was actually thinking the Ghost's ability to frighten. Like, how many times have you seen a player pick a Conquest Paladin and then get frustrated that they have no way to frighten anything? you know, so just I agree that Putrid is extreme. I think it's more powerful generally. And thinking through like the specific subclasses that depend on specific conditions, but it's so hard for them to get those conditions to happen on their own. I think that if you have, a buddy where you're like, hey, Warlock, can you frighten that guy for me? And I'll whack him. Or, hey, Warlock, I'm sticking with Warlock. Do you want to poison that guy for me? I'll whack him. It's you can do like a lot of really cool. These summon spells are excellent, especially for those kind of niche subclasses that really need just a little bit extra. They need one more way to try to get their point across,
Yeah, and actually, partially due to Last Night Owls, and due to some of the things I'm thinking about for my mini campaign, I'm actually thinking about these kinds of combinations, like teamwork. Yes, I mean, at this level anyway, people generally know how to flank, they know how to give people advantage, they buff their allies and things like that, and that's great teamwork. But also think about like teamwork opportunities like that, where you have this ghost going around and poisoning people, or outside of this a little bit, two people have similar spells like Wall of Light, or something like that, and they use it in tandem because they just happen to go after each other. They use it in tandem to catch somebody like in a crossfire kind of thing, and basically prevent them from moving, or at least reduce their chances of moving in the direction they want to go, because there's light on all sides of me now. Where do I go? But that's that's a bit of a different thing. But I like the more I'm playing D&D and the more I'm DMing and observing other players, I really think it would be super rewarding to come up with cool little team combos like that, kind of like you see in other video games, actually. So yeah, I think this is really cool, especially for Warlock.
Yeah, I think the best place I've seen setups like that, where it's it depends on the team working together to pull off really unique strategies, is the MOBAs, like League of Legends or Dota, where it's all right, our carry is going to be this hero or this champion. I'm going to pick a support that plays specifically to that carry's strengths. And then you're going to pick a mid-ranger who is specific to, so you have a team composition that wraps around a core concept. And I think that a lot of, and with the ability to pivot, of course, but I think that D&D is I learned a lot about D&D by playing MOBAs like that, because you would see people prep in advance, we're going to try to win with this strategy. So we need to pick these items, these builds, these heroes, so that way we can make the most out of our abilities. And I think when you start thinking in terms of that, and not in terms of what does my character do, it's what does my character do and how does it set up the next player, you start getting a lot of really cool story moments that I think people that tend to only think of their character, they want, but can't figure out exactly how to get. And it's because you have to think outside of your character. You have to think outside of yourself in order to make the most out of those abilities. And that's the narrative gateway to that enriching storytelling.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of different topics just by going through these spells.
Yeah.
This has been very energizing. And with our next time, we're going to take a look at magic tattoos and get into that whole other frame of reference for the rest of this document, because we did a lot of cool stuff with just talking about the spells here. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the DM Shower Thoughts. You can find this podcast uploads every week or bi-weekly on Podbean on every other Friday and at noon approximately, and also in video form sometime up on the YouTube channel, which is DM Shower Thoughts over on the YouTubes, which also has its own content of videos going up every Sunday. And then you can check out my blog, The GM's Corner, now with a new edition in the topics area, which is two editions really, which is called Notes from the Apprentice, where we feature every now and then a little post from our buddy Ian. And also this section called Void Speaker, where I just share bits of creative writing here and there, just stuff to exposit on and inspire. And you can find posts for that every Tuesday and Saturday. Yeah. All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And please, game responsibly. Bye-bye now.